Mother-in-law from hell threw me a surprise birthday party but made my birthday about herself. She then harassed me at work and secretly planned my vow renewal without permission. For context, Chris, 33M, comes from what I would call a very traditional family. Chris and I, 31F, have been married for 5 years now and have been together for 9 years in total. He works as an accountant at a mid-sized firm downtown and I work as a graphic designer for a marketing company. We live about 2 hours away from both our families, which has always worked well for us. Chris's mother Lexi, 58F, has been a stay-at-home mom his entire life, and his father Sam, 61M, owns a small construction business. Lexi has always been very involved in Chris's life, even after we got married. She calls him at least 3 times a week and expects us to visit every other weekend. I've always tried to be respectful of their close relationship, even when it sometimes felt overwhelming. My own family is quite different. My mother Katie, 54F, works as a nurse and has always been very independent. My father died when I was 12, so my mother raised me and my younger brother mostly on her own. She taught me to be self-reliant and to speak up for myself when needed. My mother and Lexi have met several times over the years, and while they're polite to each other, they're very different people with different approaches to life. The situation I'm writing about started about 3 months ago when my birthday was approaching. I was turning 31, and honestly, I wasn't planning anything big. Chris and I had talked about maybe going out for a nice dinner, just the two of us. I've never been someone who needs a lot of attention on my birthday. I prefer small, intimate celebrations with the people closest to me. About 6 weeks before my birthday, Lexi called Chris and suggested that she throw me a surprise party. She said she wanted to do something special for me since I'm such an important part of the family. Chris was excited about the idea and thought it was sweet that his mother wanted to celebrate me. When he told me about it later, he asked if I would be okay with a surprise party. I told him I wasn't really a surprise party person, but if it would make Lexi happy and it stayed small, I could go along with it. Chris called his mother back and told her I was okay with the idea, but that I preferred smaller gatherings. He specifically mentioned that I would want just close family and maybe a few friends. Lexi seemed to understand and said she would keep it intimate and classy. She asked for a list of my close friends and their contact information, which Chris provided after checking with me first. Over the next few weeks, Lexi would call Chris regularly with updates about the party planning. She seemed very excited about the whole thing and kept talking about how special it was going to be. She asked about my favorite colors, my favorite foods, and what kind of cake I liked. Chris would relay these questions to me, and I would answer them, thinking this was all normal party planning stuff. About 2 weeks before my birthday, my best friend Angie, 29F, called me with a strange question. She asked if I knew that Lexi had contacted her about the party and had asked her not to wear certain colors because they would clash with the theme. Angie thought this was odd because she'd never heard of someone having such specific dress code requirements for a birthday party. I brushed it off and told her that Lexi was probably just trying to make sure everything looked nice in photos. A few days later, my coworker Amanda, 26F, who was also invited, mentioned that Lexi had called her workplace looking for her personal phone number. Amanda said Lexi had left a long voicemail explaining that she needed to discuss some important details about my party. This struck me as strange because I had given Chris Amanda's contact information, so Lexi should have already had it. The week before my birthday, Chris started acting a bit nervous whenever the party came up in conversation. When I asked him about it, he said his mother was just very excited and had been calling him with lots of ideas. He mentioned that she had rented a venue at their country club instead of having it at their house like originally planned. He said she wanted to make sure there was enough space for everyone. This made me a bit uncomfortable because their country club is quite fancy and formal, and I had been expecting something casual. When I expressed this concern to Chris, he said his mother just wanted to make the day special for me and that I should try to appreciate the effort she was putting in. He reminded me that his mother didn't have to throw me a party at all, and that I should be grateful. The day before my birthday, my mother called me. She had also been invited to the party and had been contacted by Lexi several times over the past few weeks. My mother said Lexi had been asking her detailed questions about our family history, my childhood, and even my relationship with my father before he passed away. My mother found these questions invasive and inappropriate, but she had answered some of them because she didn't want to cause problems for me. On the morning of my birthday, Chris took me out for breakfast and then suggested we go shopping for a new outfit for the party. He said his mother had mentioned that everyone would be dressed up and that I should wear something elegant. This was another red flag for me because I had never told Lexi that I wanted a formal party. Chris insisted that I was overthinking things and that his mother just wanted everyone to look nice for the photos. We arrived at the country club that evening, and Chris led me to a private dining room. When we walked in, I was shocked by what I saw. The room was decorated entirely in pink and gold, colors I had never mentioned liking. There were photos of me from various stages of my life displayed on easels around the room, including some childhood photos that I had never given to Lexi. The centerpiece of the room was a large banner that read "Celebrating Lisa, daughter we never had," with a photo of Lexi, Chris, and me in the middle. The guest list was also much larger than I had expected. There were people I had never met before, including several of Lexi's friends from her book club and her church group. My own friends looked confused and out of place. My mother was standing near the back of the room with a concerned expression on her face. Lexi approached us as soon as we walked in. She was wearing a long, formal dress and had clearly spent a lot of time getting ready. She hugged me tightly and told me how excited she was to finally have a daughter to celebrate. She had never talked about me this way before, and it made me uncomfortable. The party proceeded with Lexi acting as the hostess, introducing me to her friends and telling stories about Chris's childhood. She had prepared a slideshow that included photos of Chris growing up, mixed with photos of me and Chris together. Many of the photos of me were ones I had never seen before, and I realized she must have gotten them from my social media accounts or from other family members. When it came time for cake, Lexi had ordered a custom cake with a photo of her, Chris, and me printed on it. The cake was decorated with the words "Welcome to the family," even though I had been part of the family for 5 years already. Lexi made a speech before we cut the cake, talking about how she had always wanted a daughter and how blessed she was to finally have me in her life. During the gift opening, Lexi had prepared a large box for me. Inside was a photo album she had made, filled with pictures of Chris's family history, including relatives I had never met. The last page of the album had a photo of Lexi and me with the caption "Mother and Daughter Forever" written in Lexi's handwriting. She announced to the room that she wanted me to keep this album so that I would always remember where I came from now. The final straw came when Lexi asked everyone to gather for a group photo. She positioned herself between Chris and me, putting her arms around both of us. She told the photographer to make sure the photo captured her 2 children together. When my mother approached to join the photo, Lexi told her that this particular photo was just for immediate family. At this point, I had heard enough. I walked over to Chris and told him I needed to speak with him privately. We went outside to the hallway, and I explained that I was extremely uncomfortable with how his mother was behaving and that I wanted to leave. Chris said I was being ungrateful and that his mother had spent weeks planning this party for me. He said I was embarrassing him in front of his family and that I should go back inside and finish the party. I told Chris that I hadn't asked for this party, and that his mother had turned my birthday into something that was more about her than about me. Chris said I was overreacting and that his mother was just excited to have a daughter-in-law she could be close to. He said most women would be happy to have a mother-in-law who cared so much. When we went back inside, Lexi announced that she had one more surprise for me. She had contacted my workplace and arranged for me to have the following week off so that she and I could spend time together. She had told my boss that she was planning a mother-daughter bonding week and that it was very important for our family relationship. I was mortified because I had several important projects due that week and hadn't arranged for coverage. I politely thanked Lexi for the party but told her that I couldn't take the week off work because of my commitments. Lexi's face changed completely. She said she had worked very hard to arrange this special time for us and that a good daughter-in-law would prioritize family over work. She said she was disappointed in my response and that she had expected better from me. The room became very quiet, and I could feel everyone staring at us. My mother walked over and put her hand on my shoulder. She told Lexi that while she appreciated the effort that went into the party, she thought there might have been some miscommunication about what I would want for my birthday. Lexi responded by saying that my mother clearly hadn't taught me proper family values, and that it was her job now to help me understand what it meant to be part of their family. My mother's face went red, but she kept her voice calm. She told Lexi that I was already part of the family and had been for 5 years, and that this party seemed to be more about Lexi's needs than about celebrating me. Lexi raised her voice and said that my mother was trying to interfere with her relationship with her daughter-in-law. At this point, several of the country club staff members approached our table. The noise level had risen enough that other diners in the club were starting to notice. The manager asked if there was a problem and if they needed to move our party to a more private location. Lexi told him that everything was fine and that we were just having a family discussion. I decided that I had had enough. I thanked the guests for coming and started to say goodbye to my friends. Lexi grabbed my arm and told me that I couldn't leave my own birthday party. She said it would be rude to the guests who had come to celebrate me. I gently removed her hand from my arm and told her that I was leaving. Chris followed me out to the parking lot and asked me to come back inside. He said his mother would be devastated if I left and that it would cause problems in his family for years to come. I told him that his mother had crossed several lines and that I needed some time to process what had happened. Chris said I was being dramatic and that his mother had just gotten carried away because she cared about me. The drive home was silent. Chris was clearly upset with me, and I was trying to understand how a simple birthday party had turned into such a disaster. When we got home, I went straight to our bedroom and closed the door. Chris slept on the couch that night. The next morning, Lexi called our house phone multiple times starting at 7 a.m. When I finally answered, she wanted to talk about how hurt she was by my behavior at the party. She said she had worked for weeks to make my birthday special and that I had ruined it by being ungrateful. She said she didn't understand why I was so upset and that she had only been trying to show me love. I'm writing this post because I don't know if I'm overreacting to this situation. Chris thinks I should apologize to his mother and that I should be more appreciative of her efforts. But something about this whole situation feels wrong to me. I can't shake the feeling that this party wasn't really about celebrating my birthday at all. Update 1: I wanted to thank everyone who responded to my original post. Reading your comments helped me realize that I wasn't overreacting to what happened at my birthday party. A lot of you asked for an update, so here's what has happened since then. The day after I posted, I decided to have a serious conversation with Chris about his mother's behavior. I had printed out some of the comments from my post to show him that other people also thought Lexi had crossed some lines. Chris looked at the comments but said that strangers on the internet couldn't understand the dynamics of his family and that I shouldn't be sharing our private business online. We had several difficult conversations over the next few days. Chris kept insisting that his mother had just gotten excited about having a daughter-in-law to celebrate and that she hadn't meant any harm. He said I was being too sensitive and that I should try to see things from Lexi's perspective. He reminded me that his mother had spent a lot of money on the party and had put weeks of effort into planning it. What really bothered me was that Chris seemed more concerned about his mother's feelings than about mine. When I tried to explain how uncomfortable I had been during the party, he would change the subject or tell me that I was remembering things differently than they had actually happened. He said the banner that read "Daughter We Never Had" was meant to be sweet, not possessive. During this time, Lexi continued to call our house daily. She would leave long voicemails talking about how hurt she was and how she didn't understand what she had done wrong. She started sending care packages to our house with homemade food and little gifts. Each package included a note asking when we could get together to talk through our misunderstanding. My mother called me several times during those first few days after the party. She had been thinking about Lexi's behavior and wanted to share some concerns with me. She told me that during their phone conversations while planning the party, Lexi had asked inappropriate questions about my childhood and my relationship with my father. My mother said Lexi seemed to be trying to gather information about me that she could use to create some kind of narrative about who I was. My mother also mentioned that Lexi had asked her for copies of photos from my childhood, claiming she wanted to create a special display at the party. My mother had sent a few pictures but had felt uncomfortable with the request. She said Lexi had specifically asked for photos of me with my father, and when my mother asked why, Lexi said she wanted to show me that I now had a father figure in Sam. This information made me even more uncomfortable. I realized that Lexi had been planning to present herself as some kind of replacement for the family relationships I had lost when my father died. The more I thought about it, the more manipulative the whole situation seemed. About a week after the party, I was at work when my supervisor Angie called me into her office. She told me that Lexi had called the office again, this time speaking to the HR department. Lexi had told them that there had been a family emergency and that I needed to take immediate leave to help care for a sick relative. Lexi had said she was calling on behalf of Chris and that I might be too upset to call myself. Angie said the HR department had been confused because they had no record of me requesting leave, and my emergency contact information listed Chris, not Lexi. They had tried to reach Chris to verify the information, but he was in meetings all day. Angie asked me if there really was a family emergency that I needed to deal with. I was mortified. I explained to Angie that there was no family emergency and that Lexi was my mother-in-law who had been trying to arrange time for us to spend together. I told her about the birthday party situation and how Lexi had been trying to manipulate various aspects of my life. Angie was understanding but concerned. She said that Lexi calling my workplace and making false claims about family emergencies was a serious matter. Angie advised me to contact Chris and make sure he was aware of what his mother was doing. She also suggested that I might want to consider asking Lexi to stop contacting my workplace entirely. She said that while they understood family dynamics could be complicated, they couldn't have relatives calling and making false claims about employees needing emergency leave. When I called Chris at work to tell him about Lexi's call to my HR department, he was initially skeptical. He said there must have been some kind of misunderstanding and that his mother would never lie about a family emergency. I told him to call the HR department himself and verify what had happened. Chris called me back an hour later. He had spoken with HR and confirmed that his mother had indeed called and claimed there was a family emergency requiring me to take immediate leave. Chris was quiet for a long time after he told me this. He finally said that he would talk to his mother about not calling my workplace anymore. That evening, Chris called Lexi and asked her about the call to my workplace. I could hear her voice through the phone, and she was getting very defensive. She said she had just been trying to help arrange the bonding time she had planned for us. She said she thought if my workplace understood that there were important family matters to attend to, they would be more supportive of me taking time off. Chris tried to explain to his mother that she couldn't call someone's workplace and claim there was a family emergency when there wasn't one. Lexi started crying and said that everything she did was misunderstood and that no one appreciated how much she cared about our family. She said she felt like she was losing her son and that I was trying to turn Chris against her. The conversation ended with Lexi hanging up on Chris. He sat on the couch looking frustrated and confused. I could tell that he was starting to realize that his mother's behavior was more problematic than he had initially thought, but he still seemed reluctant to fully acknowledge it. The next day, Lexi showed up at our house unannounced. I was working from home and saw her car pull into our driveway around 10 in the morning. She knocked on the door for several minutes, and when I didn't answer, she went around to the back of the house and knocked on the kitchen door. She called out that she knew I was home because my car was in the driveway. I texted Chris to let him know his mother was at our house and that I wasn't going to answer the door. He called me immediately and asked me to please talk to his mother because she was just trying to apologize. I told him that I wasn't comfortable having a conversation with Lexi when I was alone and that she should have called before coming over. Chris asked if he could leave work early to come home and mediate a conversation between his mother and me. I agreed to this because I thought having Chris there might help keep the conversation productive. Chris called his mother and asked her to wait in her car until he could get home. When Chris arrived, the three of us sat in our living room. Lexi immediately started crying and talking about how sorry she was for any misunderstanding. She said she had only been trying to welcome me into the family and show me how much she cared about me. She said she didn't understand why I was so upset about the party when she had worked so hard to make it special. I tried to explain to Lexi that the party had felt more like it was about her vision of who she wanted me to be rather than about celebrating who I actually am. I told her that contacting my workplace and claiming there was a family emergency was inappropriate and could have put my job at risk. Lexi said she didn't realize that would be a problem and that she was just trying to help. What really bothered me was that Lexi never seemed to understand why her actions were problematic. She kept framing everything as a misunderstanding or as her caring too much. She never acknowledged that she had overstepped boundaries or that she should have asked me before making decisions that affected my life. Near the end of the conversation, Lexi asked if we could plan another get-together so that she could show me that she understood what I would prefer. She suggested that maybe we could have a small dinner party at her house with just family. I told her that I needed some time before I would be ready for another family gathering. Lexi's face changed when I said this. She looked at Chris and asked him if he was going to let me dictate when she could see us. She said that she was his mother and that she deserved to have a relationship with her son regardless of how I felt. Chris looked uncomfortable and said that we just needed some time to work through things. Lexi left our house that day, but the situation was far from resolved. Over the next few days, she started calling Chris at work multiple times per day. She would cry and say that she felt like she was losing her family. She said that I was trying to isolate Chris from his parents and that she was worried about what would happen to their relationship. Chris was starting to get stressed about the constant phone calls and the pressure from his mother. He said he felt caught in the middle between his wife and his mother, and he didn't know how to make everyone happy. I told him that he shouldn't have to choose sides, but that he needed to set some boundaries with his mother about appropriate behavior. The situation reached a breaking point when Lexi started showing up at Chris's workplace. She would wait in the parking lot for him to come out for lunch and then try to have conversations with him about our relationship. Chris's co-workers started noticing and asking questions about why his mother was hanging around the office building. Chris finally realized that his mother's behavior had become obsessive and inappropriate. He called her and told her that she needed to stop contacting us for a while so that everyone could calm down. Lexi became hysterical and accused Chris of choosing his wife over his mother. She said that I had poisoned him against his own family. That's where things stand right now. Chris and I are trying to figure out how to move forward with his family. We've decided that we need to establish clear boundaries about what kind of behavior is acceptable, but we're not sure how to communicate those boundaries to Lexi in a way that she'll actually respect. I'm still processing everything that has happened, and I'm grateful for all the support I've received from this community. It's helped me realize that I'm not being unreasonable in wanting to be treated with respect by my in-laws. Update 2: I'm back with another update on the situation with my mother-in-law Lexi. Unfortunately, things have gotten significantly worse since my last post, and I need to share what has been happening. After Chris told his mother that she needed to give us some space, we had about 10 days of relative peace. Lexi didn't call or visit, and Chris and I started to think that maybe she had finally understood that her behavior was inappropriate. We were cautiously optimistic that we could eventually work things out with some clear boundaries in place. During those quiet days, Chris and I had several good conversations about his family dynamics. He admitted that his mother had always been overly involved in his life, but he had never seen it as a problem before because it was just how their family operated. He said that being married to me had helped him realize that not all families function the way his does, and that maybe some of his mother's behaviors weren't as normal as he had thought. Chris also apologized for not supporting me more during the birthday party situation. He said that he had been so focused on trying to keep everyone happy that he hadn't really listened to my concerns. He promised that going forward, he would prioritize our marriage and make sure that his mother understood that I was his primary family now. I was starting to feel hopeful about our relationship and about the possibility of eventually having a healthier dynamic with Lexi. Chris seemed to genuinely understand why I had been upset, and he was taking steps to address the issues with his mother. I thought we were moving in the right direction. Then Lexi started calling our house in the middle of the night. The first time it happened, I thought it might be an emergency, so I answered the phone. It was 2:30 in the morning, and Lexi was crying hysterically. She said she couldn't sleep because she was so worried about losing her relationship with Chris. She kept repeating that I was trying to steal her son away from her. I tried to calm her down and told her that no one was trying to steal Chris from anyone. I explained that we just needed some time to establish healthy boundaries so that everyone could have good relationships with each other. Lexi said that I was lying and that I had been planning to isolate Chris from his family from the beginning. She said she could see through my manipulation and that she wasn't going to let me destroy their family. The call lasted almost an hour, with Lexi alternating between crying and accusing me of various things. She said that I had brainwashed Chris and that the son she raised would never treat his mother this way. She said that my own mother had clearly failed to teach me how to respect elders and that I was a bad influence on Chris. When I finally managed to end the call, Chris was awake and had heard most of the conversation. He was shocked by his mother's behavior and immediately called her back. He told her that calling our house in the middle of the night was unacceptable and that she needed to stop harassing me. Lexi started crying again and said that Chris was breaking her heart by choosing his wife over his mother. Over the next 2 weeks, Lexi called our house at least 15 more times during the night. Sometimes she would just cry into the phone, and other times she would launch into long speeches about how I was destroying their family. We started turning off our phones at night, but then she began calling our neighbors and asking them to check on us because she was worried something had happened. Our neighbor Mrs. Johnson came over one evening to ask us about the calls she had been receiving from Lexi. Mrs. Johnson said that Lexi had called her multiple times claiming that she was worried about Chris's safety and asking if she had seen any signs of trouble at our house. Lexi had told Mrs. Johnson that she thought I might be abusing Chris and that she was concerned for his well-being. Chris was mortified when Mrs. Johnson told us about these calls. He immediately called his mother and confronted her about spreading false rumors about me to our neighbors. Lexi denied saying anything about abuse, but she said she was genuinely worried about Chris because he had never treated her this way before. She said that something must be wrong for him to suddenly turn against his own mother. The situation escalated further when Lexi started showing up at my workplace. She would wait in the parking lot and try to approach me when I left the building. The first time this happened, she blocked my path to my car and demanded that we have a conversation. She said that I owed her an explanation for why I was trying to destroy her family. I told Lexi that I wasn't trying to destroy anything and that I just wanted us all to have respectful relationships with each other. Lexi said that respect meant accepting her as the head of the family and acknowledging that her relationship with Chris was more important than mine. She said that wives come and go, but mothers are forever. Lexi started crying and said that she had dreamed of having a daughter-in-law she could be close to, and that I had ruined that dream by being selfish and controlling. She said that if I really loved Chris, I would encourage his relationship with his mother instead of trying to interfere with it. She said that good wives support their husbands' family relationships, not sabotage them. I tried to walk around Lexi to get to my car, but she grabbed my arm and said we weren't finished talking. I told her to let go of me and that I was leaving. Lexi said that I couldn't just walk away from family problems and that we needed to resolve this situation immediately. Several of my coworkers had come out of the building and were watching this interaction. I managed to get into my car and drove home, but I was shaken by Lexi's behavior. When I told Chris what had happened, he was furious. He called his mother immediately and told her that she was not allowed to come to my workplace anymore. He said that if she continued to harass me, he would have to consider more serious consequences. Lexi's response was to call Chris's father Sam and tell him that Chris was having some kind of breakdown and that I was manipulating him. Sam called Chris that evening and asked him to come home for the weekend so they could have a family meeting to work through the problems. Sam said that Lexi was beside herself with worry and that the whole family was concerned about the situation. Chris was torn because he loved his father and didn't want to cause problems in his parents' marriage. He also felt guilty about the effect that our situation was having on his mother's mental state. He asked me if I would be willing to go to his parents' house for a family meeting so that we could try to resolve everything once and for all. I was reluctant to put myself in a situation where I would be outnumbered by Chris's family, but I also wanted to try to find a resolution to the ongoing conflict. I agreed to go to the meeting with the understanding that Chris would support me if his mother became inappropriate or aggressive. The meeting was scheduled for the following Saturday afternoon. When we arrived at Chris's parents' house, Lexi had prepared an elaborate lunch and had set the dining room table with her best china. She greeted Chris with a huge hug and then turned to me with a forced smile. She said she was so glad that we could all sit down together and work through our misunderstandings. During lunch, Lexi acted as if nothing had happened over the past few weeks. She talked about normal family topics and asked Chris about his work. She complimented me on my outfit and asked about my job. The conversation was pleasant but felt very artificial, like we were all acting in a play. After lunch, Sam suggested that we move to the living room to have our family discussion. Lexi immediately launched into a prepared speech about how much she loved both Chris and me, and how important family unity was to her. She said that she had been reflecting on the recent problems and that she realized there had been some miscommunications. Lexi said that she wanted to apologize for any actions that had made me uncomfortable, but she also wanted me to understand that everything she had done came from a place of love. She said that she had been so excited to finally have a daughter that she had gotten carried away with trying to make me feel welcome in the family. What bothered me about Lexi's apology was that she never acknowledged the specific behaviors that had been problematic. She didn't mention calling my workplace and lying about emergencies, or showing up at our house unannounced, or harassing me in parking lots. She framed everything as miscommunication rather than taking responsibility for crossing boundaries. When it was my turn to speak, I tried to be diplomatic but honest. I said that I appreciated Lexi's apology and that I understood she had good intentions. However, I also said that I needed her to understand that certain behaviors were not acceptable, regardless of the intentions behind them. I specifically mentioned the workplace calls, the middle-of-the-night phone calls, and the rumors she had spread to our neighbors. Lexi's demeanor changed immediately when I brought up these specific incidents. She said that I was being petty and holding grudges instead of focusing on moving forward as a family. She said that all families have disagreements and that the important thing was to forgive and forget. She said that I was being divisive by bringing up old issues that had already been resolved. Sam tried to mediate by suggesting that everyone had made mistakes and that we should focus on preventing problems in the future rather than rehashing the past. He asked both Lexi and me to commit to treating each other with respect going forward. I agreed to this, but I also said that respect had to include acknowledging boundaries and asking permission before making decisions that affected other people's lives. Lexi said that she felt like I was trying to control her relationship with her son and that she didn't understand why I needed so many rules and boundaries. She said that families should be able to rely on each other and be involved in each other's lives without having to ask permission for everything. She said that my attitude was going to hurt Chris's relationship with his parents. The meeting ended without any real resolution. Lexi agreed to stop calling in the middle of the night and to stop coming to my workplace, but she never seemed to understand why these behaviors had been inappropriate in the first place. She kept framing the problems as my inability to accept her love rather than her inability to respect boundaries. On the drive home, Chris was quiet and seemed frustrated. When I asked him how he thought the meeting had gone, he said that he felt like we were going in circles. He said that his mother seemed genuinely sorry and that he thought I could have been more gracious in accepting her apology. He said that holding grudges wasn't going to help anyone move forward. I was disappointed that Chris still didn't seem to fully understand the seriousness of his mother's behavior. He was treating the situation like a simple disagreement rather than a pattern of boundary violations and manipulative behavior. I realized that Chris was still more concerned about keeping his mother happy than about protecting our marriage from her interference. That night, Lexi called our house again. This time, Chris answered the phone. Lexi was crying and said that she felt like the family meeting had been an ambush designed to make her look bad. She said that I had been disrespectful and ungrateful, and that she didn't think I really wanted to be part of their family. She said that Chris needed to choose between his mother and his wife because she couldn't continue to be treated this way. Chris tried to reassure his mother that no one was asking him to choose sides, but Lexi said that my behavior at the meeting had made it clear that I would never accept her as family. She said that she had tried to welcome me and include me, but that I had rejected all of her efforts. She said that she didn't know how to have a relationship with Chris if I was going to continue to be hostile toward her. The call ended with Lexi saying that she needed some time to think about whether she could continue to have a relationship with Chris while he was married to someone who didn't respect his family. Chris was devastated by his mother's ultimatum, and he spent the rest of the evening pacing around the house and making phone calls to his extended family members. That's where we are now. Lexi is refusing to speak to either of us, and she's been calling other family members to tell them her version of events. Chris is caught between feeling guilty about hurting his mother and recognizing that her behavior has been inappropriate. I'm trying to be supportive of Chris while also protecting myself from further harassment. I don't know what's going to happen next, but I'm starting to realize that this situation may not have a happy resolution for everyone involved. Update 3. This will be my final update on the situation with Lexi. A lot has happened since my last post, and I think I can finally provide some closure on this whole ordeal. After Lexi gave Chris her ultimatum about choosing between his mother and his wife, we had a very difficult few weeks. Chris was clearly struggling with the situation and spent a lot of time on the phone with various family members trying to get advice and figure out how to repair his relationship with his mother. Chris's extended family had mixed reactions to the situation. His Aunt Carol, who is Lexi's sister, called Chris and told him that Lexi had been calling her every day crying about losing her son. Carol said that Lexi was genuinely heartbroken and that maybe Chris should consider couples counseling with me to work through our issues with his family. Carol suggested that I might benefit from learning more about their family traditions and expectations. On the other hand, Chris's cousin David, who is about our age, had a very different perspective. David called Chris and said that he had always thought Lexi was too involved in Chris's life and that he wasn't surprised that problems had developed after Chris got married. David said that Lexi had made similar attempts to control his relationships when he was dating, and that setting firm boundaries was the only thing that had worked. Chris also spoke with his father Sam several times during this period. Sam was caught in the middle between supporting his wife and maintaining his relationship with his son. Sam told Chris that Lexi had been extremely upset since the family meeting and that she spent most of her time crying and talking about how she had lost her son to a woman who didn't appreciate family values. However, Sam also admitted to Chris that some of Lexi's recent behavior had concerned him. He said that Lexi's middle-of-the-night phone calls and her visits to my workplace had been inappropriate, and that he had tried to talk to her about respecting boundaries. Sam said that Lexi would listen to him in the moment, but then continue the same behaviors a few days later. About 3 weeks after Lexi's ultimatum, she broke her silence by sending Chris a long letter in the mail. The letter was handwritten on several pages of her personal stationery, and it was clear that she had spent a lot of time composing it. In the letter, Lexi said that she had been doing a lot of thinking and praying about the situation, and that she had come to some important realizations. Lexi wrote that she understood that Chris was now a married man and that his primary loyalty had to be to his wife. She said that she had been wrong to put him in a position where he felt like he had to choose between his mother and his wife. She apologized for her behavior over the past few months and said that she wanted to find a way to have a healthy relationship with both of us. The letter also included specific apologies for calling my workplace, for the middle-of-the-night phone calls, and for approaching me in parking lots. Lexi wrote that she realized these actions had been inappropriate and that she had no excuse for them. She said that her love for Chris had clouded her judgment and that she had acted in ways that were not respectful of our marriage. Chris was cautiously optimistic when he received the letter. He showed it to me and said that it seemed like his mother had finally understood the problems with her behavior. He asked if I would be willing to give Lexi another chance and maybe have a phone conversation with her to discuss how we could move forward. I was skeptical because Lexi had apologized before without really changing her behavior, but I agreed to a supervised phone call with Chris present. We called Lexi together from our home phone so that Chris could hear both sides of the conversation. Lexi sounded genuinely remorseful during the phone call. She repeated the apologies from her letter and said that she wanted to earn back our trust. She asked what she could do to prove that she was serious about respecting our boundaries and rebuilding our relationship. She suggested that maybe we could start with occasional phone calls and work up to visits once we were all more comfortable. I told Lexi that I appreciated her letter and her apology, but that I needed to see consistent respectful behavior over time before I could trust that things had really changed. I said that I was willing to try having a relationship with her, but that it would need to be rebuilt slowly and with clear boundaries that everyone respected. Lexi agreed to these conditions and said that she understood that trust had to be earned back. She said that she was willing to be patient and to prove that she had learned from her mistakes. The phone call ended on a positive note, and Chris was relieved that his mother and I had been able to have a civil conversation. For about 6 weeks, things seemed to be improving. Lexi called once a week at a reasonable time to check in with Chris, and she was polite and respectful when she spoke to me. She didn't ask invasive questions or try to make plans without asking first. She sent a nice card for our wedding anniversary and kept her message simple and appropriate. Chris and I started to think that maybe Lexi had genuinely learned from the experience and was committed to having a healthier relationship with us. We even discussed the possibility of having dinner with his parents sometime in the near future. Then everything fell apart again in a spectacular way. Lexi had apparently been planning something during those 6 weeks of good behavior, and she revealed her plan when she called Chris at work one afternoon. Lexi told Chris that she had been in touch with a wedding planning company and had started organizing a vow renewal ceremony for us. She said that she wanted to give us the wedding that she felt we deserved, since our original wedding had been small and simple. She had already put down a deposit on a venue and had started sending invitations to extended family members and family friends. When Chris told me about this phone call, I was stunned. We had never discussed wanting a vow renewal ceremony, and Lexi had made all of these plans without asking us. Chris called his mother back immediately and told her that we had not asked for a vow renewal ceremony and that she needed to cancel whatever arrangements she had made. Lexi became defensive and said that she was just trying to do something special for us. She said that she had noticed that we didn't have many wedding photos displayed in our house and that she thought we might regret not having a bigger celebration. She said that most of Chris's extended family hadn't been able to attend our original wedding, and this would give them a chance to celebrate with us. Chris explained to his mother that we were happy with our original wedding and that we didn't want a vow renewal ceremony. He told her that she needed to cancel the venue and stop sending invitations immediately. Lexi started crying and said that she had already spent a lot of money on deposits and that family members were excited about the celebration. Lexi said that she didn't understand why we were rejecting her gift and that she felt like nothing she did was ever good enough for us. She said that she had been trying so hard to rebuild our relationship and that this was her way of showing us how much she cared. She said that canceling everything would be embarrassing and expensive. Chris told his mother that the expense and embarrassment were consequences of her decision to plan an event without asking us first. He said that she should have learned from previous experiences that making plans for other people without their permission was inappropriate. He told her again that she needed to cancel everything immediately. The conversation ended with Lexi hanging up on Chris. Within an hour, Chris started receiving phone calls from various family members asking about the vow renewal ceremony. Apparently, Lexi had sent invitations to over 50 people, including relatives from out of state who had already started making travel arrangements. Chris spent the rest of that day calling family members to explain that there was no vow renewal ceremony and that his mother had planned the event without our knowledge or permission. Most of the family members were understanding, but a few were annoyed about the confusion and the wasted time they had spent planning to attend. Chris's Aunt Carol called him and said that Lexi was devastated about having to cancel the ceremony. Carol said that Lexi had spent weeks planning every detail and that she had genuinely thought she was doing something wonderful for us. Carol suggested that maybe we could compromise and have a small family dinner instead of canceling everything completely. Chris explained to Carol that the issue wasn't the size of the event, but the fact that Lexi had planned it without asking us. He said that we couldn't accept any kind of celebration that had been organized without our consent because it would send the message that Lexi's boundary violations were acceptable. Over the next few days, Lexi left several voicemails on our home phone. In the messages, she alternated between apologizing and defending her actions. She said that she had only been trying to show us love and that she didn't understand why we were so upset about receiving a gift. She said that planning the ceremony had brought her joy during a difficult time in their relationship. Lexi also said in her messages that she felt like she was walking on eggshells around us and that she was afraid to do anything nice because we always found something wrong with it. She said that she missed the close relationship she used to have with Chris and that she didn't know how to fix things between us. Chris and I talked extensively about how to respond to this latest incident. We both realized that Lexi's behavior followed a clear pattern. She would apologize and promise to change, behave appropriately for a short period of time, and then do something even more inappropriate than before. We concluded that Lexi was not capable of respecting boundaries consistently and that her apologies were not genuine commitments to change. Chris made the difficult decision to have a final conversation with his mother. He called her and told her that we could not continue to have a relationship with her if she was going to keep violating our boundaries. He said that planning the vow renewal ceremony without our permission had shown that she had not learned anything from previous incidents. Chris told his mother that we were going to take a break from contact with her for at least 6 months. He said that during this time, she needed to reflect on her behavior and decide whether she was truly willing to respect our autonomy as a married couple. He said that if she wanted to rebuild the relationship after the break, she would need to demonstrate consistent respectful behavior over a long period of time. Lexi's response was to scream at Chris over the phone and accuse him of abandoning his family. She said that I had turned him against his own mother and that he was making the biggest mistake of his life. She said that family was supposed to be forever and that he would regret choosing his wife over his mother. Chris stayed calm during Lexi's outburst and simply repeated that we needed a break from contact. He told his mother that he loved her but that her behavior was damaging their relationship. He said that the decision was final and that she should not try to contact us during the 6-month period. Since that conversation 3 weeks ago, Lexi has respected the no-contact boundary. Chris spoke with his father Sam, who said that Lexi has been very upset but that she understands that Chris is serious about needing space. Sam said that he hopes Lexi will use this time to really think about her behavior and make genuine changes. Chris has been sad about the situation with his mother, but he has also expressed relief that we no longer have to deal with constant drama and boundary violations. He said that he finally understands that his mother's behavior was not just overly enthusiastic love, but a pattern of manipulation and control that was harmful to our marriage. We have decided that if Lexi contacts us after the 6-month period, we will require her to demonstrate consistent respectful behavior for at least a year before we consider resuming regular contact. We will also require that any future interactions happen with clear boundaries that are discussed and agreed upon in advance. Chris and I have grown closer through this experience, and our marriage is stronger now that we are presenting a united front against inappropriate behavior. We have learned that sometimes protecting your immediate family requires setting firm boundaries with extended family, even when it's painful. I want to thank everyone who has supported me through this situation. Your comments and advice helped me realize that I wasn't overreacting and that I deserve to be treated with respect by my in-laws. This experience has taught me the importance of standing up for myself and not accepting inappropriate behavior just to keep the peace.